What's up, guys? This is part 2 of the first deal I ever bought. I'm going to focus on the remodeling of the triplex as a complete beginner and the lessons I learned. If you haven't watched part 1, I'd say start there. Up to you. As a quick reminder, I bought a triplex in Santa Monica for $1,070,000. I owner-occupied the 2-bedroom unit. The front unit was a detached house that had 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. It was also vacant. The third unit decided they wanted to stay, which they're allowed to do. So I had this triplex with 2 vacant units, and the third unit was only paying me around $800. My mortgage payment was $3,100 monthly. I also had utility expenses of about $500 a month, property tax of about $1,000 a month, insurance of about $120 a month, maintenance of probably $100 a month for the upstairs unit. So that meant I would have income of $800 a month and a total expenses of about $4,800 per month. I would be leaking money of $4,000 a month. You have to account for that when budgeting at the beginning. However, this was my first property and I had no clue. I should have made sure I had $50,000 to the side to cover these holding costs. My dad and I had about $250,000 total in the bank account to cover everything. Everything from personal expenses to holding costs, tenant buyouts, upgrading. The first steps were buying out the tenant that I was owner occupying. That would be approximately $18,000. So our $250,000 was down to about $230,000. The other first step was getting ready to do the other upgrades for the outside of the property and the 2 vacant units. I hadn't spent time preparing for this step, just jumping into the deep end, hoping it would work out. So I Googled as many contractors as I could and started calling and scheduling walkthroughs. I met them at the property and spent an hour with each of the 8 or so that came. It was quite interesting how different all their ideas were on upgrading the property. One of them wanted to tear down the back wall and make French doors. To be honest, almost everything they were saying went right over my head. Stucco, countertops, vanities, laminate, vinyl. I had no clue on literally any of it. My main focus was, who did I trust and who could do it for the least amount of money? The next thing that happened really surprised me. I had to wait for the estimates to come back, and they scattered in 1 to 2 weeks later, and oh my God. They ranged in prices so drastically, my heart skipped a beat. The first one nearly gave me a heart attack. $500,000. My jaw was dropped. My first thought was, what did I do? Am I gonna have to sell? Remember, we only had $230,000 left in the bank. The next estimate was at about $200,000, and the rest sprinkled in. The best estimate was about $150,000 by my friend's recommendation. I liked him, I trusted him, he felt the best to me, and like someone who could handhold. He told me it would take 2 months and $150,000. Well, 2 weeks later was day number 1 of my new journey. I met Dave at the property at 9 a.m. It was demolishing day of all the old stuff. 15 minutes after they started, and Dave and I were just chatting in the middle common area, I hear a horrible scream. Ah! One of the workers sprints out of the front house to where we are, blood pouring out of his arm. I was frozen in place. Dave, the contractor, was freaking out. The rest of the workers were all yelling. 5 to 10 minutes later, there was a fire truck and ambulance there. He had picked up the 4-foot bathroom mirror and was taking it to the garage when he dropped it and it cut his wrist open. My very first project. My very first day. Within 20 minutes. And to top it off, Dave and I were out front as they whisked away the worker. Dave is completely out of sorts. Hey Eric, you have insurance, right? This might be a problem. I don't have my contractor's license per se. If I wasn't horrified enough, I almost died right then. I had no clue what any of this meant or what the ramifications were going to be. I hope you didn't get the impression that I was an expert real estate investor at the beginning. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has to learn. Ultimately, we resumed the project, and luckily my insurance did cover this. It wouldn't end up resolving for the next year and a half, but I didn't have to come out of pocket. I lucked out. Make sure you have good insurance. Don't skimp on insurance. You never know when you're gonna need it, but you will need it. So, the project continued. What was supposed to be 2 months turned into 5 months. What was supposed to be $150,000 turned to $200,000. As it was nearing the end, by golly, our money in the bank was down to $50,000. Compared to our general expenses, that money could disappear in months. This was my first lesson in a liquidity crunch. Sleep became scarce. Stress became rampant. I needed to rent out the front unit ASAP. I had no budgeting skills. All I knew was that the bank account was dropping quickly, weekly. I found a renter for the front 3-bedroom house at $4,200. Plus, they wanted to pay 4 months in advance. That meant I got to put an extra $16,000 in our bank account. And we got to move into our unit, which meant we didn't have to pay rent at the other place that we were staying. Our cash flow was still depleting. Even with my dad's psychology practice income and this building's income, our expenses were out of control, and I was not making any money as a real estate agent. I had one saving grace in my head. This property had equity in it. I had a fallback. I could sell if I had to. So I bought the property for $1,070,000. I put $270,000 into it. That includes the holding costs of $50,000, the tenant buyout of about $20,000, and the upgrades of approximately $200,000. We were in for $1,340,000 with the loan. So if you subtract what the property was now worth, about $1,770,000, minus what I was in for, you get a profit of $470,000. That means that there was total equity in this property of $967,000. But that money was just equity in the property. I had no access to that capital, and our liquidity in our bank accounts was ridiculously low. I had to have my dad take out a $40,000 line of credit for his business. We were in a scary spot. If we had to, we could sell the property and be okay. But it would take months to sell a property. What if we went to zero and couldn't pay our mortgage? What if we then got foreclosed on? I'm not trying to scare you here, just prepare you for your deals. You need to budget properly if you can. If I sold the property, I would have had to pay capital gains tax on over $400,000 in profit. I didn't want to do that unless it was a last resort. So what did I do? I needed to find a lender that would do a cash out refinance. I've seen that there's confusion on the cash out refinance, and the point is that there's equity in the property. So even though you're taking out a bigger loan, you still have equity in the property to protect you. The hunt for a lender was on. I went to 5 different mortgage brokers. I went directly to banks. Nobody wanted to lend to us. The reason was that our expenses showed too high and we weren't deemed a borrower that most standard lenders would finance. Here is where my next key to this business is: finding the right mortgage broker and lender who has more flexibility. This isn't easy to find. I was outside of the triplex one day and I saw another renovation happening across the street. I saw a guy outside the property who looked like the owner. I almost didn't go out to talk to him, but luckily, the stars aligned and I did. He told me 2 things over the next 30 minutes that would change my life. If you want to hear these 2 things, hit that like button. If you don't hit the like button, then guess what? I'm going to tell you anyway. The first was that he told me about his remodel. He told me he was changing the floor plans in the units. He was turning them from 2-bedroom units into 3-bedroom units. I'm telling you, this is the most amazing value-add thing you can do to make a lot of money. Remember that. The second was that he told me about a mortgage broker that he used and recommended highly. I told him I was having issues getting a new loan, and he proceeded to tell me about Diego. Diego, he's my guy now. I loyally used Diego for almost all my loans because he saved me at the beginning. I called Diego and he told me he had a lender through a credit union who would lend me based on bank statements and the quality of the asset. He got me a new loan of $1,063,000. So I paid back the old loan of $800,000 and got cash out money of approximately $250,000 after closing costs of the loan. Liftoff. We had liquidity again. So you can see what happened here. We had tremendous hurdles, stress, liquidity issues, contractor issues, lender issues, but it worked out in the end. We turned $540,000 into $970,000. My cut was $215,000 based on the agreement I had made. Not a bad job for a year's worth of work. And it was the start. We all have to start somewhere. Raise the money, learn from these videos, and pull the damn trigger. Move forward and jump in. It'll work out. You will have your own obstacles and hurdles, but you'll make it over. I know you will. I really hope you enjoyed part 1 and 2. This process has been enjoyable for me, sharing my journey. It allows me to reflect on what has happened. As I recount these stories, I remember old lessons and reapply them to what I'm currently doing. So thank you for listening and being part of this with me. I really hope you can comment on what you want to hear more about, and also subscribe so that I know this is of value to you. Thanks again, and see you next time.